Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome. It is Thursday Morning Live. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. It is hard to believe that it is the end of the year already. I'm just amazed. We're just a couple of weeks away from Christmas, and really focusing in on the end of the year. And I'm starting to see people take time off and not working as much. But I'm glad that you're here this morning. And you know what? If you're new to the show this morning, please tell somebody else to come and listen in. I think you're going to be in for a great surprise this morning. I have a great guest, and I'll get to that in a minute. Remember, though, this is really the time of year to be intentional about what you're doing, what you're working on for next year, right? Are you goal setting? Are you starting to plan? Are you working on a business plan for yourself? And how's that coming together? I have a great offer for you. I'd love for you just to go and download my free 2023 goal setting and planning guide. You can either send me an email or look in the show notes, and there'll be a link there for you to download that. But it's a free download. It'll walk you through some things about being intentional, some ideas and thoughts around affirmations, how to create a mindset that's going to help you go to the next level, setting steps, and of course, the business planning system I love to use, which is a 1-3-5. I've used it for years, and it just has helped me continue to grow and roll my business forward. Any of my coaching clients that I've worked with have had the same opportunity where they've grown their business as a result of it. So anyhow, I'm glad that you're here this morning. My guest this morning is Dan Barrett. Dan Barrett is with Adwords Nerds from Chile, Connecticut. We were on early this morning just talking about the weather, and seems like that's where the conversation always goes, but we talked about how chilly it is. So let me bring Dan in.
Hey,
Dan,
how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing super awesome, man. Yeah, I thought you were saying that I was from Chile, like Chile, the country, and I was like,
yeah.
oh, I wish I was that cool. Thanks for having me, man. I'm super happy to be here. This is fun.
Yeah, you had me on your show, and we just kind of really hit it out of the park. And I thought, man, it'd be great just to have you and talk about what you do, because I think you do some great things. So we'll get to that in a minute, though. But one way that I always start my show, all my podcasts, is I like to ask the one question. In one word, what best describes you personally and professionally?
Yeah, in one word, what best describes me? That's a great question, man. I will often say that I am a student first. So I am a student. If I had to point to one thing that's going to be really in many ways, my only real advantage over most people, it's that I am a voracious reader and learner and studier. I'm a huge note taker, and I am constantly jumping from thing to thing. I learned a long time ago that oftentimes it's the things that you are interested in learning that don't seem to have a direct connection or impact on your business or what you do that makes money that will often give you an edge, right? So like an example would be, and obviously we do online marketing, we do Google ads, Facebook ads, SEO, all that stuff, for investors. And I made huge strides in both how we deliver that service and also how I teach it when I brought over things like theory of constraints, which was a manufacturing process improvement methodology, right? So I was like, oh, there's this thing over here that was designed for warehouse optimization that can actually be very easily ported over to PPC and SEO. And when I did that, it both really simplified the management process, made it easier to teach. It's the sort of framework that when I work with students, I'm always saying, like, what's the constraint? What's the constraint? It's a focusing mechanism, and it's made that product, that process, that service way better, right? So it's all these things that I'm constantly studying and learning about and then applying to our core offering that kind of make us different. right? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I always say I'm a student first, and I love it, man. There's nothing I like more than doing
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
That's awesome. You know, I just had this conversation with somebody over the last couple of days about how we have to continue to keep learning, you
Mhm.
know, and that's how we keep growing. I think that if we stop learning, we just stop growing, right? And anybody that I work with or coach, that I'm always trying to encourage them, hey, grow personally, because then you'll grow professionally. Don't
Yeah.
try to push the professional side so much, push the personal side, because it's about personal growth. And I think that learning piece is such a big part of that. You know, I say, you know, I've done like 300 episodes, right, on a couple of different platforms and podcasts, and it's interesting. I ask that word all the time, and nobody's ever said that. Um,
Cool. I like that. I dig it.
yeah,
I'm happy.
it's,
I'm
so
happy.
so that was unique. Yeah. But I'm going to write a book one of these days with all the words that people have said, because I think that
Oh, that's a cool idea, man. I like that. That's neat.
yeah, be a
Yeah,
great.
I'd be curious.
I'll make sure you get a copy when I
All
do
right,
that.
I'm in it.
Hey, so let's do this. Talk about your background a little bit and what you're currently doing and how you got to where you're at.
Yeah. So my background, I took a very circuitous route to get to where I am. So what I was doing before I started doing this was working on becoming a teacher. I wanted to be a high school teacher. I went to college for history and then ended up getting master's degrees in history and education. That's what I wanted to do. I want to teach history. I still love teaching, and I teach all the time in my business. And in a lot of ways, AdWords nerds, I think we stand out among agencies in that I'm very client facing. I believe very deeply in sort of educating the marketplace. I'm always doing stuff like this. I've YouTube, the podcast, whatever. Like I'm always trying to educate people, right, for free. All right. So I love teaching. It's kind of in my blood. But the reason I originally started teaching was I was in bands in high school and in college. And I was like, that's what I want to do. Well, teaching is the job where you get the summer off. So I
Yeah.
was like, I'll teach, and then I'll take summer off and we'll tour. So, I was really active as a musician and from a very young age. And when you are in the kind of band that I was in, there always needed to be someone in the band that was the one who prints the t-shirts and like designs the t-shirts, or like we needed a website or we needed yada, 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 right? A MySpace, for whatever. And so I just was always that person for whatever reason. I taught myself HTML when I was in high school, so I could make a band website, right? It was like always stuff like that. Like I taught myself some Photoshop so I can make t-shirts for the band, right? And then once you get the t-shirts, you've got to divide them up and you got to figure out how many of each size that you need, and you got to sell them and you got to keep track of the money. So it's like over time, I was just getting these sort of skill sets, right, of kind of marketing and business management and all this stuff. And so when I was, in college, I read 4 Hour Work Week, and I was like, that's it, making money online. I had a string of the worst online businesses you could possibly imagine, just like trying to, drop ship knives from China and all this stuff. Just nothing ever worked. But again, every time I was trying something different and it didn't work, but I was learning some other weird little skill set, right? And again, that's what I enjoy, right? Like I enjoy, like, let me learn a new system, let me learn a new piece of software. So, one of the things that I picked up when I was originally trying to do the whole 4 Hour Work Week thing was I picked up a little bit of Google Ads and a little bit of SEO and a little bit of just online marketing stuff. So fast forward a couple of years, I was doing my student teaching. I had been working as a paraprofessional in schools for many, many years at that point. And I was like, well, I'm going to freelance, do a little bit of online marketing work for local businesses just to make some extra cash, right? And about a year into it, I realized that I was making more money freelancing part-time than I was going to as a full-time high school teacher. So I was like, I'll just give it a shot. Like my wife was very supportive. She was like, give it a shot, see what happens. And I kind of just made the jump into that. Spent a couple of years doing that, really kind of building my skill set, trying to figure out like, how do you get clients? How do you talk to people? Like none of this stuff I was really, super knowledgeable about. And at one point, I decided I was going to spend more money than I'd ever spent on anything in my entire life, which was to spend $10,000 to go to Business Mastery with Tony Robbins. I put it on a credit card, which they, by the way, still one of the best over-the-phone sales pitches I've ever received in my entire life. Because at the end, I was like, look, I don't have $10,000. And he's like, put it on a credit card. And the guy on the phone, and I was like, look, I can't just put this on a credit card. Like I'm married. Like this is like my joint thing. And he's like, here, I'm going to give you a script. Here's exactly what you tell your wife. And he like gave me this like bullet pointed script for this conversation I was going to have with him. So anyway, really great job with their team.
I'm going to start using that stuff, by the way.
I know, it's amazing, right? It's truly, truly very well done. So I went down there. I ended up sitting all the way in the back because I was like, I don't know anything about Tony Robbins really at this point, other than he makes people dance. I don't dance. I was like, now I'm like a little over it. I'll dance if I want. But, at the time I was like a little insecure. So I sat all the way in the back, and I'm sitting next to a bunch of real estate investors. And, we're talking, we're chatting, and they're like, what do you do? And I was like, well, I do online marketing, but my big thing is I want to pick a focus because I know that I want to be the best in the world at something. And in order for me personally to be the best in the world at something, I'm probably going to have to pick a pretty specific thing, right? Like I'm not going to be the world's best online marketer. I'm not going to be the world's best, whatever, but I could be the world's best for a particular type of client. So I have to pick who that client's going to be. And these people were like, well, you should do real estate investors because we always need leads. And I was like, done. That's it. And that was like 10 years ago. And it's been 10 years now, only doing investors, only really working on finding motivated sellers online. And it's been a really fun process. There's never a day that goes by where there isn't something new to learn or get good at. And that's what I love about it, right? So before we jumped on the call today, I am like neck deep in AI. Like I'm trying to learn how to code with AI. I'm trying to learn to build apps with AI. I'm trying to learn how to plug Google Ads into AI in order to produce written reports on how the accounts are doing. I'm trying to apply AI to big real estate data sets. Like I'm interested in AI now, and I don't know where that's going to go, but I do know that it's a skill set that would be useful to have, and it's going to be a differentiator, a leverage point, right? So again, it's like that process never stops in this industry. It's why I love it so much. There's always something new to learn, always something new to mess around with and play with, and it's been real fun.
Yeah, interesting. So I'm really intrigued about the Tony Robbins thing. I'm a fire walker, right?
Yeah. I think we talked about this. Yeah,
I've walked on fire, and I just think that you grow and learn so much from his events specifically, but events like that, right? I think people need to take that step because that goes back to being a student, right? I mean, think about what you learned from there and walked away with. Yeah. Even taking that risk of, hey, I just put it on a credit card. I went for 3 or 4 days to this thing. And, from there, I'm here today as a result of what I've learned from there and along the way. So I think that's just awesome that you took that risk, right? Because that comes down to risk. And, sometimes you just have to step out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So.
There is always going to be a point where you are going, if you want to really grow, right? You by definition will have to stretch further than you are comfortable with, right? Because if you are comfortable with it, you would not be growing past where your current capacities lie.
Yeah.
Right? So there's always that point. And the other thing is that it never stops, right? It never stops. Like, that was $10,000 for a 3-day thing. Recently, I signed up for a program with someone that I really like, someone I really trust, really great content, right? It's a skill set that I don't have, like somebody who, did risk management for hedge funds, right? Super analytical, really deep on the math. And I was like, I want to know what this guy knows. His thing is it's $30,000 to work with him, right? And I was like, that for me today, that's uncomfortable the way the $10,000 was uncomfortable to me then. And it just, but I did it and I got a ton out of it. I use all that stuff now in my business, right? Like I have a volatility calculator on Google Ads data so I can understand if the markets are more or less volatile over time. Like that's not a thing I knew before. So there's always a point at which you got to stretch a little bit further than you're comfortable with. And I know it's like when you're looking to work with someone that knows what you want to know, is where you want to be, right? Is successful, is doing deals, is building a fund, like whatever it is, someone who has that experience, it's a stretch, but man, it speeds up. It shortens that learning curve like nobody's business, right? It makes that process so much more doable. So it's been very, very rare that I have really regretted making a decision like that.
Yeah, it's like that book. It's not how, it's who.
Yeah.
Who, not how.
Yeah.
So because a lot of times we just don't know, so we've got to go get the information and then put it into play. So hey, I want to talk about the AdWords piece. I want to talk about what you do for realtors and how you help enhance their business. There's a lot of realtors that listen to this and get this content, not just realtors, but real estate investors.
Yep.
And so what does your business do to help them, and how do you streamline your service for them?
Yeah. So we're just to be clear, like we're 100% focused on investors. Investors are our only clients, right?
Okay.
I have worked with realtors in the past. It's just, I like the focus on investors. And investors, look, if you're a realtor and you're listening to this, no offense, I love you. You're amazing. Investors tend to be a little bit more hardcore, which I like. You know what I mean? I like that side of it. So in any case, so what we do for investors is you would come to us in order to build and implement and manage an online marketing strategy, right? So it would be like, hey, I want to get motivated sellers. I want deals. I want to have my online marketing get me deals. How do I do that? And we do that in a couple different ways. We are primarily focused on Google Ads.
Okay.
Mostly because it's what most people want. It's the fastest sort of, speed to ROI channel that there is. The lead quality is still very strong. It's a competitive channel for sure. So you're spending money to generate clicks, right? So it's not right for everybody, but it's a very powerful channel. Still the best one, I think, for investors overall, right? But we also do Microsoft ads, also known as Bing ads. We do YouTube ads. We do search engine optimization. So anything that ranks your website organically in Google, we do some Facebook. And, essentially what we do is, we sit down with the investor, we build a strategy, we implement, build those campaigns, and then we manage them long-term, right? Like we are focused on the long-term. We are not a huge agency. I'm not trying to be a huge agency. I like my team the way that it is, right? Like we are looking to work with the best investors in the world, the people that are most invested in that channel, understand the importance of online marketing, right? So, if that's something that people want to do, we work with them to manage and optimize all that stuff. So we've got a full-time team, dedicated in-house team and all that fun stuff. And we really focus on trying to use data in order to get a competitive advantage over time for our clients, right? So one of the things that differentiates us, and I think one of the reasons that we've been around for so long, like we've had many competitors come and go, but we have been more or less the top agency in the space for that entire 10-year period. And I think that the reason that that's the case is because we only work with investors. And even within investors, we are like 90% focused on motivated sellers. I think we're moving to a market where we are expanding into buyers a little bit more because I think that's what the market conditions entail. But, historically, we've been very focused on sellers. What that means is essentially we have more data on what works and what doesn't in Google Ads for investors than basically anybody outside of Google, right? There may be one or two other companies that do things on the scale that we do them, because we manage, $5-6 million of ad spend a year in Google Ads just for investors, right? And so it just gives us, I really believe this, and this is kind of transitioning a little bit just into general advice, but we are transitioning into a period that is really focused on data, what data sets you have access to and how you use them. And the more data you can generate for your business, the better it's going to be long term, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's interesting. So when you talk about working with investors and helping them find motivated sellers, do you help other side finding investors to invest in syndications and raise capital, private investors, that type of, and what do you think, share one or two techniques that you use. Is it in the AdWords? Is it in the writing? Is it the copyright? What is it that really makes the difference in what you're doing?
Okay. Yeah. And by the way, because we're recording this live stream and because it's important to me, someone's decided to operate a buzzsaw directly outside my window. So I just muted my mic, but if it gets loud, let me know and I'll throw my AirPods on and that'll help to mute the sound.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
That's the challenges with being live, right?
Oh my God. Every time.
Wait till an ambulance goes by out in front of my place.
I used to live in this area that was like, we had like 3 hospitals within like driving distance. And so it was just like, so do we do buyers, investors? So yes, a little bit. Actually, we're growing into that space. It's been something we're doing more of, mostly because we're getting requests for it way more often. I think as we move into a market where deal disposition becomes more difficult, I think that's become more common. We also just, I think a lot, it's like, we talked about syndication and sort of building funds and stuff on the show. And I think that's becoming sort of, I think more people are sort of seeing that as a viable option. And so I think that's a growing market segment. So it is something that we do. It's something that's more experimental for us. But ironically, it's more similar to the marketing that I do for my own business, right? Because I'm trying to get investors as clients, right? So it's like, ironically, I know a lot about it, but mostly from doing my own marketing, right? So absolutely can work. Very different approach than doing sellers in general. Mostly because there's a lot less people to go around, right? There's way more sellers than there are accredited investors. And so, it's a very different approach. You're going to use different channels, different tactics, all that stuff. Now, in terms of what makes it work or not work, right? Like what are the sort of key elements, right? There's a couple different things. One, I really believe there is no one size fits all strategy for everybody. Just like there is no one size fits all investment strategy for everybody, right? Like you would never recommend to someone that they do the same. Oh, the buzzsaw going. Can you hear it? Or are we good?
Yeah, we can hear it.
You can hear it? All right, I'm going to throw on my AirPod. Hold on.
Okay. I don't know if I ever had anybody walk away during a podcast.
That's how you know it's live. You know it's live, right? Here, hold on.
Yeah, that will not be edited out. We're going to leave that in there.
All right. Can you hear me okay right now?
Yeah, sure can.
All right. Is it still bad with the buzzsaw sound?
Yeah, it's not that bad. It's okay. So I think if you don't focus on it, we'll be all right.
Just view it as a warming hum of like a white noise machine.
Right.
This guy is absolutely murdering me. It's been all week, so I apologize for that.
It's a production error.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay. So in any case, what I was saying is there's no one size fits all strategy, right? So the first step I always point out to people is if you want to do this well, right, just like investing, the key point is you have to stay in the market long enough to recoup on your returns, right? It's just like you have a sales cycle. Let's say whatever your normal deal cycle is, right? You got to acquire the deal. You got to get the appointment. You got to put it under contract. You got to do, let's say you're rehabbing, you're doing that, then you got to sell it, right? And let's say it's taking you a little bit longer to sell deals than it typically would, right? To dispose of that deal. So you've got, let's say, a longer sales cycle than average. Well, hey, you've got to stay in the market long enough to actually get the revenue back in order to run a positive return. right? And so if you don't incorporate that into your strategy for what you're doing online, it's not going to go well for you. Right. I think a lot of investors get into online marketing with this idea where it's like, okay, well, I've got 30,000, let's say, whatever. I'm just make this up. Let's say I've got $30,000 marketing budget total, right? Now I could spread that out over a year, or I could put it all in month one, do a deal, get the money, and then put the money back into the channel, right? But what ends up happening is they don't factor in that whole sales cycle process, and they don't factor in the fact that here's some kind of basic background information, right? Online marketing channels like Google Ads are markets the exact same way that the stock market is a market, right? There are different players that are bidding on different things. The price of those things, in this case, it's keywords, right? In the stock market, it's stock. In Google Ads, it's keywords. The price of these things will go up or down depending on changes in demand and changes in supply. If less people are searching for a given keyword this month, then there's less supply. If people want that keyword really bad, there's high demand. Low supply, high demand, price goes up, right? If the reverse is true, let's say it's, there's lots of searches for a given thing, demand for that is low, price goes down. Now that is different, right? That's the same as in the stock market. But imagine that for Google Ads, that is different every single different market that you head into. Right. So imagine that there was different stock market prices if you were in Chicago or New York or Los Angeles. Right. So it's like, hey, Los Angeles keywords cost a different amount than they cost in Weehawken, cost a different amount than in Hartford. Right. So what people don't factor in is that even if you are me and this is all you do and it's all you've done for 10 years, you still do not know exactly what you are going to get when you launch a new campaign, because this market is different from all other markets. This point in time is different from all other points in time, right? Market conditions like the housing market, what's going on with the Fed, what's going on with the economy, all of these things impact the performance of a campaign. And so what people don't factor in either is runway to learn and figure out what is working. They think, okay, look, sell my house fast is a great keyword. If I target that keyword, I will get a deal. It will cost me X. I will make Y, and then I'll put it back in the account. And they go in with that strategy and they end up exploding, right? So what I always say is we call Barrett's rule. Okay, Barrett's rule is what you spend in online marketing per month, right? So this is how you figure it out. What's your budget? What can you afford to lose for 6 months in a row? And it's not that I think you will lose it, but I think that it is possible you might lose it. And if you're going to go out of business, if you lose that amount of money, you should not do that, right? Like pick an amount that's safe, cap your downside, pick an amount that's safe to bet, gamble with, right? And it's not really gambling, but think of it that way. And if you do that, you're building in a margin of safety that gives you time to experiment, to optimize, to learn, to improve, and so on. And then you have a system that is producing a steady and stable ROI, right? The other thing I think that people often lose track of is that any asset involves a certain amount of price volatility, right? Like if you have a house, right? The house is worth a certain amount, but that amount goes up or down, right? Over time, right? And certain assets are more or less volatile than others. I might have a crypto coin or whatever that goes up and down like 1,000% of its value every day, right? I might have real estate that's less volatile, right? It is experiencing fluctuation in value, but slower and less dramatically over time, okay? So the exact same statistical phenomenon of volatility applies to the performance of any online marketing campaign. So let's say, because people love to do this, and I'm not calling anybody out, but investors that do online marketing will love to get on shows like this and be like, hey, I got 10 deals from Google Ads. They're like $1,000 per deal, and I made $50 billion, right? And they're like, yeah, they show like they got the check, and they show like the screenshot of the account. And it's like, yeah, you come on in and like learn my secret, whatever it is, right? And it's kind of goofy, but people get wrapped up in it, right? Because they're like, wow, what you do psychologically that people don't realize is you take that snapshot, which is I spent, let's say 5,000 and I made 50,000. And they extrapolate that out as a straight diagonal line. Well, it's like, wow, if I made 50,000 and I put 10,000 in, then I would make 100,000. And then if I put 20,000 in, then I would make 150. And they imagine that it is arithmetic, right? It goes straight up. It's simple math. But that's not how it works, because that original snapshot of I spent 5 and I made 50, that might be over the course of a year, right? You are averaging out. When you average out performance, what you do is you erase volatility. Because what that might mean is I went 6 months without closing anything, and then I closed a $50,000 deal in month 7. It's still, I spent 10 and I made 50, but it's a very different experience when you're watching your card get dinged every week, right? So what I always say is, like, you have to be aware of volatility in how these systems perform, because what people end up doing is they get in month 1, they have sort of a rough month, or it doesn't go the way that they wanted, or they have a great month in month 1, and then month 2 is slow, and they're like, it's not working them out, right? Again, they don't stay in the market. And if you don't stay in the market, you don't recoup your revenue, right? So those are the 2 things I always point out, right? You got to cap your downside, understand your margin of safety, and you have to understand volatility. Once you do that, you can build a strategy that fits your goals, your risk tolerance. That's really what's most important to me, is making sure that people are safe and they meet their business goals. Not that they do some strategy that I wrote in a blog post once, so I'm like, this is the best, and I make everybody do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And, I like what you say, people have to make that commitment, right? I saw a post on Facebook or somewhere yesterday that said, if you're not willing to make a 5-year commitment, don't make the commitment. And I think that when you're going into business, when you're doing something, and I'm not saying that in what you're doing for people that they need to make a 5-year commitment, but I'm just saying, it's that whole thought process. We have to stay committed for a period of time. Yeah. Hey, I appreciate you being here this morning.
Yeah.
A lot of great insight, a lot of great information. What are you building something outside with the saw?
They are repairing. I think they're rebuilding the stairway to my office building. It's got nothing to do with me. If I was going to get some out of it, I might be like, okay with it, but no, I'm not. So I appreciate you bearing with me through the saw thing. It's not the best, but I appreciate it.
Well, you know what, though? Safe stairs are good to have. So if they're repairing stairs, that's good for you. So, hey, how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so best way is just go over to adwordsnerds.com. We've got a whole bunch of free stuff, blog posts. You can get my podcast on there, which is called the REI Marketing Nerds Podcast. That's available everywhere podcasts are sold. I've got a YouTube channel, all sorts of stuff. You can get that all at adwordsnerds.com. I always tell people, you don't got to give me your email. You don't got to buy anything. I'm not going to make you jump through any hoops. I just put a ton of stuff out online. You can find it. Go to adwordsnerds.com.
I'm the same way. I just continually push, stuff out all the time. So good. Yeah. Hey, been great catching up with you again. Thanks for being here this morning. I'm going to say goodbye. Hang out with me for a minute, okay? Be right back. Thing. Yep. Hey, everybody. Wow, what a great episode, right? A lot of information, a lot of knowledge. Dan Barrett with AdwordsNerds.com. Just really talked about how do we use AdWords, SEO, Google Ads. You know what? And early on, if you weren't here, we talked about the book, not how, but who. And I really take that to the next level right now, because a lot of this advertising stuff, a lot of marketing, you know what? I don't know how to do it. You might not know how to do it. Use somebody like Dan to do it for you. So reach out to him, give him a call. Hey, thanks for being here. If you are setting goals, if you're working on next year's business plan, go download a free copy of my 2023 goal setting and planning guide. I'm going to walk you through some affirmations, a little bit about mindset, how to get ready. Some steps about setting strategic and smart goals for yourself, and then how to build a business plan using a 1-3-5, which is a system I've used for years. my coaching clients use it, I get an opportunity to help them push their business further along 20% every year. And so just think about that, though. If your business could grow 20% next year, what would that do for you? So if you're looking for a little guidance, if you're looking for a little help, reach out to Dan or to me. I love to network, answer any questions for you. Remember, we're here every Thursday morning. Saturdays, we do multifamily unplugged. So if you're a multifamily investor, Saturday mornings will be great for you. Look forward to helping you. Have a great holiday season, everybody, and we'll talk with you soon.